The moment I pushed the hotel door open, time seemed to slow. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. And then there she was, Claire, tangled in pristine white sheets, her bare shoulders exposed, the shape of another man's body pressed against her. She gasped, but not in shame, not in panic, in annoyance, like I was the inconvenience, like I was the problem for being here. My breath turned to ice in my chest. I could hear the blood roaring in my ears, but the rest of the world was eerily silent. The man beside her, groggy and clueless, blinked up at me. Then realization dawned in his widening eyes. Claire clutched the sheet tighter around her, face twisting into something unreadable. And then she had the audacity to speak. "Jason, this isn't what it looks like." I let out a laugh, hollow and humorless. A laugh that didn't belong to me, like it had been forced out of some other man's throat. "Oh?" My voice was steady, too steady. "Then tell me, what the hell is it?" Just 12 hours ago I was standing in our kitchen, pouring coffee, completely unaware that my entire world was about to collapse. It started as a simple idea over breakfast. Sophie was pushing her cereal around the bowl, her little face drawn in disappointment. Ethan barely looked up from his phone, too absorbed in whatever game he was playing. Claire had been gone for 3 days already, and we still had 4 more to go. 7 days in total. Too long. "Hey, what if we went to see Mom?" I said suddenly, setting my mug down. Sophie's eyes went wide. "Like, just show up?" Ethan finally looked up, skeptical at first, but then I saw it. "Flick, that'd be kinda cool," he muttered, which, from a 13-year-old, basically meant he was thrilled. That was all I needed. I ran with it. Flights were booked within an hour. The kids were buzzing with excitement. We packed fast, stuffing suitcases with clothes, grinning at the thought of Claire's surprise. I imagined her face when she opened the door, stunned, overwhelmed, maybe even tearing up. We hadn't had a moment like that in years. But then a nagging thought crept in. Claire hadn't answered when I called that morning. Not unusual. Work trips could be hectic. But when I texted, "Hey, hope work's going okay, just wanted to hear your voice," she didn't reply. An hour later, I sent another. "Kids miss you. Call when you can." Pfft. Still nothing. A little weird, but I brushed it off. The flight to Chicago was smooth, the city lights sparkling beneath us as we landed. The air was crisp, full of energy. The kids were practically bouncing. I rented a car, punched Claire's hotel address into the GPS and set off, anticipation thrumming through me. 5 minutes from the hotel, my fingers itched. I told myself I wouldn't call her. I wanted it to be a pure surprise. But something gnawed at me. I hit dial. No answer. I glanced at the time. 9:43 p.m. Not that late. Maybe she was asleep early? I tried again. Straight to voicemail. That nagging feeling? It wasn't just there anymore. It was clawing. We finally pulled up to the hotel, my pulse picking up for no logical reason. Inside, I told the kids to wait in the lobby while I got our room keys. "We're going to jump out at her, right?" Sophie asked, practically bouncing. "Yeah," I said, but my voice came out tight. At the check-in desk, I smiled. "Hey, my wife, Claire Thompson, is staying here. I wanted to surprise her. Could you ring up to her room?" The receptionist's polite expression flickered. "I'm sorry, sir, but she's not answering." My stomach twisted. "Maybe she's asleep," I offered, forcing a chuckle. What was the other option, that she was ignoring the call? Then the receptionist hesitated, glanced at her screen and said something that sent ice shooting through my veins. She checked in with a +1. A +1? The words left my mouth before I even fully processed them. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, sir. The room is under her name, but she listed an additional guest." She hesitated. "I just assumed you knew." I stood there, staring at her, my world narrowing to those 2 words. A +1. I had spent the whole day imagining Claire's face lighting up when she saw us. I had pictured the tears, the laughter, the warmth of a family reunited. But now, all I could see was a hotel screen confirming what I wasn't ready to believe. I forced myself to smile. "Right, that's fine." My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. My hands were shaking when I slid my credit card across the desk. "Can I get a key to my room?" The receptionist quickly typed on her keyboard, avoiding my eyes. She knows, I realized. She knows exactly what kind of situation this is. A moment later, she handed me my key. "You're on the same floor as your wife, just a few doors down." Perfect. I walked back to the lobby, my legs moving on autopilot. The kids were waiting, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "We're all set," I said, plastering on a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Let's drop our stuff off first." Sophie practically skipped beside me. "Can we see Mommy right away?" "Soon," I promised. We rode the elevator up. Ethan was glued to his phone. Sophie was humming some cartoon theme song, and I felt like I was about to walk into a war zone. Our room was nice, clean, normal, but I barely noticed it. I told the kids to get comfy, order whatever they wanted from room service, and then I stepped back into the hallway. Claire's room was just 4 doors down. I walked slowly, my pulse hammering so hard it echoed in my ears. This was it. A work friend crashing in her room? A perfectly innocent explanation? Or something else? I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Harder. Still nothing. She was in there. I knew she was in there. I pulled out my phone and texted her. "Me, hey, I'm at your hotel. Open the door. Read." No reply. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt, and then, before I could overthink it, I turned on my heel and marched back downstairs. The receptionist looked surprised to see me again. "Hey," I said, sliding my room key across the counter. "I locked myself out. Can I get a new one?" She nodded, started clicking away at her keyboard, and then I said, "Oh, and could you add my wife's room to my key? We always do that when she travels, just in case." I smiled like a man who wasn't about to watch his marriage burn to the ground. She hesitated. Beep. A few more keystrokes. All set. I took the key back. "Thanks," I said. Then I walked back upstairs to see for myself. My feet felt numb as I walked back down the hallway. The key card in my palm felt heavier than it should have, like it was carrying all the weight of what I was about to find. Room 814. Claire's room. I stood outside the door for a second, just breathing. If I was wrong, I'd look like a lunatic. If I was right... I didn't let myself finish that thought. Beep! The green light blinked. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. A mix of cologne, sweat, and something else. Something I couldn't let my brain name just yet. The kind of smell that didn't belong in a room my wife was supposed to be staying in alone. The room was dimly lit, just the bedside lamp casting a soft glow, and there, tangled in the pristine white sheets, was Claire. She wasn't alone. For a split second, my brain refused to process it. Like if I didn't acknowledge what I was seeing, it wouldn't be real. Then she saw me. Her eyes met mine, and for that one single moment there was something terrifying in them. Not guilt, not shame, annoyance. Like I was the problem, like my very presence was an inconvenience. The man next to her stirred, his face groggy, still lost in whatever dream he'd been having. He blinked up at me in confusion before the realization hit him like a train. His face drained of color. Good. Claire scrambled upright. Yanking the sheet up around her like that made any difference. Jason, she stammered. I didn't even let her finish. Who's he? My voice came out eerily calm, almost detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked between me and him like she was calculating her next move. Then she had the audacity to say, "Jason, this isn't what it looks like." I barked out a laugh, a sharp, humorless sound that made the guy in bed finally sit up straight, fully awake now. "Really?" I asked, my voice still too calm. "Because it looks like you're naked in a hotel bed with another man." She swallowed hard. "I can explain." I crossed my arms, then explain. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Jason, you're overreacting." I felt something in my chest snap. The guy who finally had the sense to start pulling on his pants cleared his throat. Maybe I should." "Sit the down," I growled. He froze. Claire rolled her eyes. Rolled eyes. "This is so typical," she muttered under her breath. "You always blow things out of proportion." I stared at her, stunned. "Claire," I said slowly, "I flew here with our kids to surprise you. Sophie and Ethan are down the hall thinking their mom is working hard on a business trip." She flinched at that, just for a second. Then her face hardened again. "Jason, you don't understand." "No," I cut her off, my voice dropping into something dangerously quiet. "I think I understand perfectly." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Claire just sat there, wrapped in the sheets like they could somehow protect her from the mess she'd made. The guy, who I still hadn't acknowledged beyond telling him to sit his ass down, shifted uncomfortably. He was looking for an exit, probably realizing that he had no idea what kind of storm he had just walked into. "Look, man," he started, hands raised like I was about to throw a punch. I had no idea she was married. Claire whipped around to him so fast her hair snapped over her shoulder. "Ryan, shut up." But the damage was done. I smiled, slow and cold. "Ryan, huh?" I looked at Claire, and for the first time in years, I didn't recognize her. "Wow, you didn't even tell him about us." She opened her mouth. "Shut it," Ryan swallowed. I mean, she said she was single?" I finished for him. His silence was answer enough. Claire exhaled sharply and ran a hand through her hair like I was the one giving her a headache. "Jason," she started, her voice shifting into something softer, something rehearsed. "I made a mistake." I laughed, a real full-bodied laugh that had nothing to do with humor. "A mistake?" I repeated, tilting my head. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is taking the wrong exit. You didn't accidentally get naked in a hotel bed with another man." She winced. I took a slow step forward, not in anger, not in violence, but in something much worse, absolute, unwavering clarity. "How long?" She blinked. "What? How long has this been going on?" Her lips parted, but she hesitated, and that second of hesitation was all I needed. Ryan, who clearly had more self-preservation than she did, ran a hand down his face. "Oh, fuck me," he muttered under his breath. I nodded. "That long, huh?" And then Claire snapped. "Why does it matter?" She burst out, exasperated, like I was the one being unreasonable. I went still. "Why does it?" I had to take a slow, deliberate breath to keep myself from breaking something. "Are you serious right now?" She groaned, running a hand through her hair. "Jason, you're a great dad, okay? You're a great husband. You work hard, but I needed—" She stopped herself. I took another step forward, my voice dangerously low. "Say it." She didn't. So I did. "You needed something else." She winced again, but she didn't deny it. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "Our kids are literally down the hall, Claire." My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Sophie was bouncing the whole plane ride, so excited to see you. Ethan actually put his damn phone down long enough to come surprise you. And you—" I had to stop myself, had to force the words down before they burned through me. Claire was silent. Ryan, who at least had the decency to look like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die, cleared his throat. Maybe I should go." "Shut the fuck up, Ryan." He shut the fuck up. I turned back to Claire. "You weren't supposed to get caught, were you?" She flinched, and then, like some demon had possessed her, she lifted her chin and said the worst thing she could have ever said. "You should have told me you were coming." The room tilted. Ryan muttered something and grabbed his bag. "Yeah, I'm out." He bolted for the door like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. I didn't even look at him, because my entire world had just shifted on its axis. "Are you—" My voice cracked. I swallowed. "Are you saying this is my fault?" She crossed her arms, her face unreadable. "I'm saying if you had told me this wouldn't have happened." Something inside me snapped. I took a slow, shuddering breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "No, Claire," I said, my voice like ice. "This didn't happen because I showed up. This happened because you made a choice." Claire scoffed, rolling her eyes again, like I was overreacting, like this was some minor inconvenience for her. "Oh, please," she snapped. "Like you haven't been emotionally checked out for years?" That one hit me. Hard. I took a step back, shaking my head in disbelief. "What the hell are you talking about?" She threw her hands up. "Jason, don't act like you're perfect. You barely even look at me anymore. You're always working, always with the kids, and I—" She exhaled sharply, squeezing her eyes shut as if this, her betrayal, was somehow painful for her. I just needed to feel like a woman again. I stared at her, waited for the regret to sink in, waited for her to realize what she just said. But she didn't. She just stood there, arms crossed, face set in stone, like I was supposed to just accept that. And that's when I knew there was nothing left to save. Something inside me shattered, not in an explosive way. Not in the way that makes you want to scream or throw something or punch a hole in the wall. No, this was different. This was the kind of break that left you feeling eerily calm, the kind that turned your soul to ice. I looked at her. This woman I had built a life with, raised children with, and I realized she wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was bored. I let out a breath. Slow. Steady. Like I was grounding myself before stepping into a fight I knew I was about to win. "Okay," I said. Claire blinked. "Okay, what?" "Okay. I get it now." She shifted her weight, crossing her arms tighter over herself. "Jason, don't do this dramatic. You're not in love with me anymore." Her lips parted. I took a slow step forward. "You haven't been in love with me for a long time, have you?" Her jaw tightened. "That's not—" "Just answer the damn question." She hesitated. Then so casual it made my skin crawl, she shrugged. "I don't know." I actually laughed, because what else was there to do? "Wow," I muttered, running a hand down my face. "You don't know." Her expression turned annoyed again, like I was dragging this out too long. "Jason, I didn't plan for this to happen," she said, like that made it better. It felt good to be wanted. I stared at her. "You think I don't want you?" She rolled her eyes. "Not in the same way. Not like before." "You mean not like a stranger in a hotel bed?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair?" My voice thundered through the room. "Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. Is this situation not fair to you? Is this hard for you?" She looked away. "You wanted to feel like a woman again?" I scoffed, shaking my head. "Try feeling like a husband who just found out his wife has been sneaking off to hotel rooms with random men while his kids beg for her attention back home." She let out a slow breath, pressing her fingers to her temples like I was the one giving her a headache. And that's when I knew. She wasn't listening. She wasn't processing. She was just waiting for me to shut up. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who used to cry when we watched sad movies. At the woman who used to leave little notes in my lunchbox before work. At the woman who used to laugh so hard she couldn't breathe when Ethan would tell his dumb little jokes at dinner. She wasn't that person anymore. Or maybe she was, and I just wasn't worth it to her anymore. Either way, I was done. I turned toward the door. Claire stiffened. "Where are you going?" I paused, glanced over my shoulder. "To our kids, the ones you apparently forgot existed while you were busy feeling like a woman again." Her face twisted in something ugly. "Don't be dramatic, Jason." I laughed under my breath. "You haven't seen dramatic yet." Then I walked out the door and left her there, standing in the wreckage of everything she destroyed.
I walked down the hotel hallway, my legs moving like they weren't even mine. My body felt heavy, like someone had tied bricks to my shoulders, but my mind was screaming at me to keep going. Just keep going. Because just 4 doors down, in room 810, my kids were waiting for me. Sophie was probably sitting cross-legged on the bed, giggling at some cartoon, still bouncing with excitement over the surprise we had planned. Ethan was probably halfway through a burger from room service, texting his friends about how Chicago's kinda sick, actually. They had no idea. No idea that their mother had just ripped our family in half in a stupid, dimly lit hotel room with some guy named Ryan. No idea that the dad who walked out that door wasn't the same man anymore. I stopped in front of room 810, 840 to 810. Just 4 doors apart, 4 doors between them and the truth, between before and after. For a second, I just stood there, breathing through my nose, clenching my jaw so hard it ached. Then I swiped the key card. Beep, green light. The door swung, open, and I barely had time to step inside before... "Daddy, did you see her?" Sophie flew at me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Her whole face lit up with pure joy. "Did you see her? Was she so happy? Did she cry?" The lump in my throat nearly choked me. I forced a smile, running a hand through her soft curls. "Not yet, baby," I murmured. "She was busy. We'll see her in the morning, okay?" Sophie's face scrunched in confusion, but she was still too little to question it. "Oh, okay." And just like that, she let it go. Because she still trusted her mother. Because she still believed in the woman Claire used to be. Ethan, though. Ethan knew. He was lying on his bed, one arm behind his head, staring at me with narrowed eyes. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, popping a fry into his mouth. My mind blanked. Plan? There was no plan anymore. I was standing in this room pretending like everything was fine, while their mother was probably scrambling for excuses just 4 doors away. I had to get them out of here. You guys want to do something fun? I said suddenly, forcing my voice into something light. Like, I don't know, get some ice cream, walk around the city a little before bed? Sophie gasped like I just told her she won the lottery. Yes. Ethan raised an eyebrow but shrugged. Yeah, sure. Why not? Cool. I grabbed my wallet, stuffed it into my jacket. Let's go then. Sophie scrambled for her shoes. Ethan pocketed his phone. And just like that, we left. I made sure to leave everything behind, because we weren't coming back. We stepped out of the hotel, and the night air hit me like a shock to the system. Crisp, cool, real. I needed that, because nothing else felt real anymore. Sophie grabbed my hand, swinging our arms as we walked down the busy Chicago sidewalk. Ethan stuffed his hands into his hoodie pockets, earbuds dangling around his neck, glancing around like he was actually enjoying. This and me? I was just trying to breathe, trying to ignore the weight of the phone in my pocket, waiting for the inevitable call or text from Claire, trying to push down the rage sitting in my gut like burning coals, trying to act normal, because they couldn't. No, not yet. Can I get 2 scoops? Sophie asked, practically skipping beside me. I forced a smile. You can get 3. Her whole face lit up. Best night ever. Ethan snorted. Dad's in a good mood. We should take advantage before he realizes we're out past bedtime. They had no idea. We found a small ice cream shop, neon lights glowing against the dark streets. The smell of waffle cones and sugar hit me like a memory from a lifetime ago. Time when things were simple, when a surprise trip meant happiness, not disaster. Sophie got rainbow sprinkles. Ethan got chocolate fudge. I got something. I didn't even know. I just needed to keep moving, keep the night from collapsing in on itself. We sat at a little table by the window, and for a while, it almost felt normal. Sophie talked about school. Ethan made fun of the way she still colored outside the lines. I nodded, laughed when I was supposed to, took bites of my ice cream that tasted like nothing. And then, my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before. I even looked. My stomach twisted as I pulled it out. One new message. Claire. Jason. Where are you? I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I turned the phone off and slid it back into my pocket, because she didn't get to ask that. Not after what she did. Hey, Dad? Ethan's voice pulled me back. I looked up. Yeah? He narrowed his eyes at me. Too smart for his own good? You okay? I hesitated. Then finally, I smiled. A real one this time. Yeah, buddy, I said, glancing between him and Sophie. I'm perfect. Because for the first time all night, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about us, and how I was going to get my kids the hell away from her. By the time we got back to the hotel, I had made up my mind. We weren't staying. I didn't care that our luggage was still in the room. I didn't care that we had technically booked the trip for 2 more nights. I was getting my kids out of this mess before it touched them. All right, guys, I said, forcing my voice into something casual as we stepped into the elevator. Change of plans. We're heading home tonight. Sophie gasped. But we just got here. Ethan furrowed his brows. Why? What about Mom? I exhaled, slowly, keeping my face neutral. Something came up. Ethan stared at me. He wasn't stupid. He knew something was off, but Sophie, sweet, trusting Sophie, was still too young to see the cracks in my voice. But Daddy, she whined, her lower lip jutting out. We didn't even get to surprise her yet. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know, baby, but we'll see her when we get home, okay? The elevator dinged. Our floor. We stepped out, heading toward our room. Just keep moving. Keep them distracted. But the moment we turned the corner, Claire was there, standing right outside room 810, arms crossed, waiting. Sophie lit up. "Mommy!" She ran toward her, but I caught her by the shoulders just before she reached her. "Go inside, Lil," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Jake, take her." Ethan hesitated, glancing between me and Claire. He knew, but now, he nodded once. Silent, understanding. Then he took Sophie's hand and led her inside. The door shut behind them, and just like that, it was just us. Claire let out a sharp exhale, her arms tightening around herself. "What the hell, Jason?" I stayed silent, just watched her. She looked disheveled, hair messy, eyes sharp like she'd been pacing ever since I left her in that room with Ryan. "Good," she scoffed. "Oh, so now you're not talking? That's real mature." Clenched my jaw. "What do you want, Claire?" She threw her arms up. "I want to talk. You just stormed out like a lunatic, took our kids, and disappeared. Do you have any idea how that looks?" I laughed. A quiet, bitter sound. "Oh, I'm sorry. Does it look bad for you, Claire? Does it look like maybe you're a terrible wife and mother? Because guess what? You are." Her face twisted. "Jason, lower your voice." I took a step closer, towering over her. "Or what?" She flinched. For the first time, real fear flashed in her eyes. Good. She should be afraid. Not of me hurting her, but of what came next, because I wasn't just mad. I was done. "Jason," she tried again, softer this time, manipulative. "Please, let's go inside and talk." I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. "Yes, there is." Her voice cracked. "This is our family, Jason." I let the silence stretch. Let her squirm in it. Then finally I said the words I knew would break her. "You should have thought about that before you got into bed with another man." Her face crumbled. For the first time all night, she actually felt it. Like she finally understood what she had destroyed. But it was too late. I pulled my room key from my pocket, opened the door, and stepped inside. Before I shut it, I turned back to her one last time. "I'll be filing for divorce when we get home." Then I closed the door in her face. The moment the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. My hands were shaking. My jaw was so tight it ached. But my mind? Clear. This was happening. I was done, and there was no coming back from it. "Who was that?" I turned. Sophie was sitting on the bed, her little legs swinging over the edge. I forced a smile. "Just someone from the hotel, baby." Ethan didn't buy it. He was sitting against the headboard, arms crossed, watching me. "Was it Mom?" he asked flatly. I hesitated. Lying to Sophie was one thing. She was too young to understand any of this. But Ethan? He saw too much. I sighed, rubbing, a hand over my face. "Yeah." His expression didn't change. "You guys fought." It wasn't a question. I exhaled. We just had a talk. He stared at me for a long second. Then quietly he said, "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" It felt like a punch. To the ribs. Sophie froze, her big innocent eyes darting between us. "Wait! What?" "Damn it, Jake." I crouched in front of them, choosing my words carefully. "Listen," I said softly. "Mom and I are working through some things. But no matter what happens, we both love you. You know that, right?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't want you to break up." My heart shattered. I pulled her into my arms, hugging her tight. "Oh, baby girl," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "It's going to be okay, I promise." Over her shoulder, I met Ethan's gaze. He wasn't crying. He wasn't yelling. He just looked tired, and in that moment, I knew. He already understood. He knew things weren't fixable. He just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Sophie sniffled against my shirt. "Can we just go home now?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yeah, baby." "We're going home." Ethan nodded. Good, and just like that, it was decided. We were leaving. I grabbed my phone and booked the earliest flight out. One way. No return. Because we weren't coming back. Not to this hotel. Not to this city. Not to her. By the time we reached the airport, the weight on my chest had settled into something cold. Heavy, but steady. It was over. No more pretending. No more pushing through the lies. No more waiting for Claire to come home, only to feel like a ghost in my own marriage. The only thing that mattered now was getting them out. Sophie was half asleep against my side as we sat at the gate. Her tiny fingers still curled around my sleeve like she was afraid I'd disappear. Ethan had his hood up, scrolling through his phone, but I could tell. He wasn't really looking at anything. He was processing, thinking. Didn't check my phone. Not once. I knew Claire was texting, calling, probably spiraling, but she wasn't my problem anymore. Sophie shifted, rubbing her eyes. "Do you think Mommy's going to come home after us?" She mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. I forced my fingers to unclench. I didn't answer right away, because I couldn't lie to her. Before I could speak, Ethan did. "She won't." My head snapped toward him. So did Sophie's. "Jake!" I warned, but he just shrugged. "She didn't care we were here, Dad." His voice was flat, sharp. "She didn't even ask to see us." I winced, because he was right. Claire hadn't. Fought to see them. Hadn't called me, begging to hug Sophie one last time. Hadn't asked to apologize to Ethan. Hadn't even tried to explain herself. She only wanted to control the situation, and when she couldn't, she let them leave without so much as a goodbye. Sophie blinked up at me, confused. "Mommy still loves us, though, right?" My throat closed up. Of course she does. Maybe she did. Maybe in her own twisted, selfish way, Claire still loved them. But love wasn't enough, because if it was, we wouldn't be sitting here waiting for a flight back home without her. A flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Now boarding for Flight 274, non-stop to Atlanta." I stood, shifting Sophie onto my hip, grabbing her small backpack. "Come on, guys," I said. "Let's go home." Ethan didn't say anything, just nodded, and as we walked toward that plane, something in me felt lighter, because for the first time, in a long, long time, I wasn't just leaving Claire behind. I was taking my life back. The flight was quiet. Sophie curled up against my side, her tiny body rising and falling in deep, innocent sleep. Ethan had his earbuds in, staring out the window, but I knew he wasn't listening to anything, just watching the dark sky stretch out over the clouds. And me, I sat there, staring at the seat in front of me, running through every moment of the last 24 hours like I was watching a movie I never wanted to see again. The way Claire's face twisted in annoyance when I caught her. The way she made me feel, like it was my fault. The way she let us leave, without even saying goodbye to her own children. I clenched my fists, then forced them to relax. It didn't matter anymore. We were going home. But the problem was, home wasn't home anymore. We landed, early in the morning, the sky still tinged with gray as I loaded the kids into the car. The drive back felt too quiet, like even the world knew something was broken. When we pulled into the driveway, Sophie stretched and let out a sleepy yawn. "Mom's still at the hotel, right?" Ethan shot me a look in the rearview mirror, waiting for me to answer. I took a slow breath. "Yeah, baby." She nodded, satisfied. "Okay, I'm gonna make her a card for when she gets home." Ethan looked away, didn't say anything. I unlocked the front door, and the moment we stepped inside, the emptiness hit me like a truck. The air was still, too still, like the house knew Claire wasn't coming back. Sophie kicked off her shoes and ran to the living room, already rummaging for crayons. Ethan walked in slower, his eyes scanning the space, like he was seeing it for the first time. I dropped my bag by the door. Exhaled. Then, before I could stop myself, my eyes flicked to the kitchen counter. To Claire's coffee mug, still sitting there from the morning she left, cold, untouched, a reminder of the life we had. Before I knew the truth, Ethan must have followed my gaze because he scoffed under his breath. Guess you don't have to make her coffee anymore. I swallowed hard. Jake. It's fine, he muttered, walking toward the stairs. I'm just gonna go to my room. I let him go. Because what was I supposed to say? That it wasn't fine? That I wished things were different? That I wished, against all logic, that Claire had just been a better liar? I closed my eyes for a second, ran a hand over my face, and sighed. Then I turned to Sophie. She was already scribbling furiously on a piece of paper, tongue sticking out in concentration. Daddy, how do you spell love? My throat tightened. I crouched beside her, brushing a curl from her face. Love, baby. She grinned, carefully writing each letter in big, uneven handwriting, Love, and underneath it, Momi. Had to look away. Because I couldn't do this right now, not when my daughter still believed her mother was coming back. Not when I wasn't sure how to tell her the truth. Not when I wasn't even sure what home was supposed to be anymore. The house was quiet, too quiet. Ethan was in his room, door shut, probably texting his friends about how his family had just exploded overnight. Sophie was still at the kitchen table, coloring in the heart she had drawn next to the word Mom. And me? I was just standing there, staring at my daughter's perfect little handwriting, wondering how the hell I was supposed to tell her that her mother had already walked out of this family long before I caught her in that hotel room. I pulled out my phone. No new messages. Claire had given up. No more texts. No more calls, not even a fake excuse. I don't know why that hit me harder than anything else. I had spent years choosing her, choosing our marriage, choosing our family, and the moment she realized she couldn't talk her way out of this, she stopped choosing us altogether. Daddy? Sophie's soft voice snapped me back. I looked down. Her big round eyes blinked up at me, still full of trust. When's Mommy coming home? My chest felt like it was caving in. How do you tell a 6-year-old the truth? How do you tell her that the woman who tucked her in at night, who kissed her boo-boos, who promised she'd always be there, wasn't coming back? You don't. Not like that. I crouched beside her, brushing a hand over her hair. Mommy's going to be away for a while, baby. She frowned. Why? I swallowed hard. Because grown-ups don't always get things right. And sometimes when they make mistakes, they have to go figure things out on their own. She considered that, her little fingers tracing over the heart she had drawn. Then, but she still loves me, right? My breath hitched. I forced a smile. She'll always love you, baby. It wasn't the full truth, but it was her truth, the one she needed, the one she'd hold on to until she was old enough to understand. The real version, she beamed. Okay, then I'll save this for her when she gets back. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Because she didn't know. She didn't know that the card she just made would sit on the counter for days, weeks, months. She didn't know that every morning she'd wake up and run downstairs expecting to see her mom drinking coffee at the table. She didn't know that one day she'd stop asking. That one day she'd forget she ever made this card at all, and that was the part that broke me the most. Because no matter how much, I hated Claire for what she did. I hated that she could still break our daughter's heart without even being here. Life has a way of teaching us painful lessons, but the hardest ones often come from the people we trust the most. Betrayal doesn't just break hearts. It reshapes lives. If this story teaches us anything, it's that blind loyalty can be dangerous. Love is a choice, and when someone stops choosing you, you have to choose yourself. Know your worth, protect your peace, and most importantly, Never stay where you're no longer valued. Pain is temporary, but self-respect lasts forever. Walk away from what hurts you, not because it's easy, but because you deserve better.